Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Hack, and in this video we'll be updating one of our classic builds. This is going to be the Fire God 1-bar Magicka DK solo build for the Elder Scrolls Online. And let me tell you, builds in ESO do not get much easier than this. We're combining massive dot damage as well as easy healing and damage mitigation, making you nearly unkillable in many situations in ESO without mythic items or trials gear. Nothing fancy here. This is an extremely simple build, and it's a lot of fun to play. Of course, we do have a 2 skill bar option that we'll be showing off as well for more damage and survivability. And we'll be talking about how the Magicka Dragonknight is actually extremely powerful moving into the Deadlands DLC. You don't want to miss this one, so let's get started. All right, everybody, we are back on the Magicka Dragonknight with an updated solo build. This is going to be looking ahead at the Deadlands DLC, checking out how some of the new updated sets for Update 32 are affecting builds. Lots of good options here, so I thought I would start doing a few updates early, starting with this 1-bar Mag DK. Super easy, more powerful than ever this patch, so let's check it out. Starting with those buffed stats on the build. About 33,000 max Magicka, 26,000 max health, 15,000 max stamina, about 900 mag recovery, 4,200 spell damage, 54% spell crit. For the resist, looking about 16,000 spell resistance, 13,000 physical resistance. And of course, all of these stats will actually go up quite a bit if you decide to use the 2-bar version of this build. It's not much more difficult, but you do get a lot more stats and damage out of running 2 skill bars. Of course, you will want 64 points into max Magicka. And then we are running the Thief Mundus, extra spell crit, as well as the blue food here, max health and max Magicka. In terms of potions, you will want basic spell power potions if you want to run the easy 1-bar setup. That's just because we don't have enough slots for buffs on the 1-bar build. If you're running 2 skill bars, you can get away with just trash Magicka potions. That's completely fine. You can run something like Tri-Stat potions for more resources if you want. And then finally, in terms of our race, went with Dark Elf on this setup. You do get some nice passive bonuses, including max Magicka and max stamina on the Dark Elf, which is very good for soloing. You get increased flame resistance as well as weapon and spell damage. So it's a good solo setup for Magicka Dragonknight. Other races will be completely fine as well. Health gives you the same weapon and spell damage buff as does Orc. Khajiit, you'll get the extra crit damage, a bit more sustain from recoveries. Whatever you want to work with here is completely fine. Now, let's get into the more interesting bits of this build, and that's how sets have changed. Now, I haven't updated this build in quite a while. I used to use, I believe, Elfbane and Cyrodiil's Light. We're doing something completely different here, focusing on dot damage, and specifically an older set that will be updated coming in the Deadlands DLC, and that is the Deadly Strike set. Now, you might know this as a medium armor set. This is a favorite of mine for like Stamina Templar especially, but this is getting hybrid stats next patch, and so I wanted to try it out on a Magicka dot build. Here's what the new stats will look like for you once Deadlands drops. 129 weapon and spell damage, 657 critical chance, so that's both spell crit and weapon crit. Another weapon and spell damage bonus, and then the 5-piece increases the damage of your damage over time and channeled abilities by 15%. So as you can see, this is no longer limited to just stamina builds. It still is a medium armor set, but it's giving you basically hybrid stats, so you can run it on a Magicka dot build if you want, and it actually works really well. Now, if you can, I think the ideal way to do this probably is going to be to pick up a staff. Inferno Staff on the Mag DK because we're going with the fire damage focus, of course. We do have Sharpened as the trait here. That's just for a solo build. I think that makes sense. But you could also run Precise. You could use Infused. And we are using a Damage Shield enchant. So if you want a truly like unkillable setup on this build, run Infused with the Damage Shield enchant with a couple of CP updates. You'll be getting huge damage shields for free on this setup. So that's going to cover 2 bonuses for Deadly Strike, and then the rest will be jewelry. So you can run the Deadly Necklace and 2 rings, and you'll just want to make sure you have spell damage enchants on these, and eventually transmute these because these do come in robust, which is stamina, I mean, one or two of those isn't going to be terrible, especially if you're not a Dark Elf. Extra stamina will be good. But you do want either Bloodthirsty or Infused to maximize your damage. So I've got 2 Bloodthirsty, 1 Infused on the jewelry. So that is our first 5-piece set here. Trying out Deadly Strike. Now, in terms of the body set, I just went with a standard, light armor solo build setup. Mother Sorrow, extremely easy setup to get. Can run 5 pieces of this on the body. Now, this will be changing as well. You can see how the 3 through 5-piece bonuses now give you critical chance instead of spell critical. So it's pretty interesting. Could use this on a stamina build, I guess, if you wanted to. But for Magicka builds, nothing really has changed. It's not going to affect your build at all. You can still run this set perfectly fine. And I do like the increased crit chance. Just going to make all of our dots do a lot more damage. So again, running that 5 pieces on the body. Got the chest, waist, hands, legs, and feet. All divines, all max Magicka for the enchants. Now, yes, in case you're wondering, you could run a couple of deadly pieces on the body. You could run like a medium deadly chest for a little bit more resistances if you wanted. That's completely up to you. Now, last but not least for the monster set, I stuck with the tried and true flame damage set. That's going to be Grothar from the Vaults of Madness dungeon. This gives you max Magicka. And then a 10% chance to do flame damage in an AoE around us for 5 seconds. And this does actually have a chance to critically strike in the Deadlands DLC in Update 32. So you might see that in some of the gameplay. The damage on monster sets is going up a little bit. So that is kind of nice to run a monster set, especially on the solo build. For the weights here, I decided to do 1 heavy and 1 medium. Now you could completely do 7 light if you wanted to. You could do 6 light, 1 medium. You could do 5 light, 1 medium, 1 heavy like I'm doing. It's really up to you. There's lots of good options now in ESO. Lots of different ways to combine your gear sets. Of course, the main reason why you want to run 1 heavy and 1 medium is just to get the Undaunted metal passive. So 6% bonus, max health, stamina, and Magicka. So all that to say, basically the weights are up to you. Divines, though, as the trait will be the best trait for this setup. So that's the basic build now. Again, we're using Deadly Strike, weapons, and jewelry. We've got the Mother Sorrow on the body, and then Grothar for the monster set. Let's go ahead and jump into the 1-bar skills very quickly. So, again, Fire Staff, we're going to start with Blockade of Fire. So that's from our Destruction Staff skill line. We want Elemental Blockade as the morph here because it does last longer. Second ability is Engulfing Flames. That comes from the Ardent Flame skill line, so more fire damage here. Our third ability does very strong flame damage over time. Also causes your enemies to take 10% bonus flame damage, which is really great on this setup especially. We'll be combining that with Eruption. Eruption comes from Earth and Heart. That's the last ability here. This does fire damage as well. Actually, the damage is really strong this patch. It does a massive snare. And they changed the cost of this as well, which is pretty nice for soloing. You can see it now costs per second instead of having an upfront cost. I think it was like 4,000 or 5,000 max Magicka or something to cast this. It's now just 340 Magicka per second. And again, that's using 5 pieces of light armor for the cost reduction. So this ends up working really nice for sustain. It definitely helps you out a lot. And then our single target damage over time is going to be Burning Embers. That again is from Ardent Flame, so you get the nice damage over time there. Plus a very juicy heal when the effect ends. So either when the dot runs out after 14 seconds, or you can recast this early to get a basically a burst heal if you need it. So this is going to be our emergency heal as well, especially for like a boss fight, something like that. Maybe you're trying to solo a world boss or a dungeon. Make sure you apply this to the main boss, and then just recast it as needed for the heal. And then finally, Introspection. This is kind of what makes this build just a set it and forget it style build. This actually comes from a guild skill line called Sigic Order, so you will need this skill line for this version of the build. That comes from Somerset, by the way. Now what this does is it actually heals you every second, as well as restores your Magicka and stamina. And then the healing goes up, so the longer you maintain the channel, the more health that you're getting, up to 50% bonus there. If you haven't seen this before, this is what the ability looks like. So basically the way this build has always worked is we just apply as many dots as we can, either ground-based dots or targeted-based dots. and then just sit in them and let things die around us, and stuff dies really quickly. Now, there are some passives that got buffed recently as well. I will talk about those more in the passive section, but introspection now makes us basically unkillable, especially in the 2-bar version of this build where we have even more defensive buffs, but we'll talk about that in a minute. It's really strong. Finally, for the ultimate here, Standard of Might is pretty much what you'll want for the 1-bar version. This is what's going to do your damage. It also reduces your damage taken by 15%, which is really good. And it's a huge damage over time effect as well. So again, all damage over times, all of our damaging effects, this is a dot, this is a dot, this is a dot, this is a dot, this is a dot. So you can see Deadly Strike is buffing all of our damaging abilities. It's quite strong on Magicka Dragonknight for sure. So let's go ahead and do a basic rotation here, a little bit of a demo. Got a world boss over here. So in terms of buffs, you'll just want that potion active. That's pretty much all you need. And then we're going to apply our ground effect dot, starting with Eruption, because that's the longest one. Wall of Elements. There's our fire. And then go right into Introspection. So we have all 4 dots ticking. And you can see I'm getting healed. I'm getting damage reduction. Getting a nice damage shield from my enchant. And then as your dots wear off, to reapply them. If your ult's ready, go ahead and drop that down. And then just introspection, just sit in your dots. Things will die pretty quickly, and you get a lot of healing and defense at the same time. So pretty much perfect setup for soloing stuff like world bosses, dungeon bosses, things like that. Let's go over the 2-bar setup as well. So this is going to increase your damage by quite a bit and your survivability. So I definitely recommend you check it out. You will need a back bar staff. I would recommend a deadly staff here as well. Doesn't have to be though. You're not going to be on the back bar too long. It's really just for buffs and a couple of dot effects. And then we're going to be staying the majority of the time on the front bar. Whatever you get though, make sure it's infused. Make sure you have a weapon and spell damage enchant on that staff for the extra spell damage specifically. And that's all you're going to need for the 2-bar setup. Now, in terms of the skills, we will be able to move some of these dots to the back. So I will be moving Blockade of Fire and Eruption to the back bar. That's going to give me some extra slots for passive damage. So good options for that would be like Mage's Guild Inner Light. This gives you 5%, up to 7% max Magicka with all your Mage Guild passives. That's going to buff our stats really high. And then another nice passive you might think about here in place of Eruption, we come down to support under the PvP skill line and slot Revealing Flare. This is pretty interesting. You now gain major protection just for having Revealing Flare slotted. So we don't need to cast this. We don't need to use it at all. But we do get major protection, which is 10% damage reduction. Really good. And then speaking of damage reduction, another option you can use to make this build even tankier. Remember, this is a light armor build too. Swap in Temporal Guard from the Psijic Order. So the Psijic Order Ultimate gives you minor protection while slotted. 5% damage reduction there. So we got damage reduction on Temporal Guard. We've got damage reduction on Introspection. And then Revealing Flare. Minor protection, major protection, plus another protection buff that's not classified. We'll look at that in a minute. But that's how I would update the front bar. So you get your pretty strong defensive passives there without really losing too much. And then on the back bar, since we're running Destruction Staff there, just move 2 of your dots there. So you got Blockade of Fire on the back bar, Eruption on the back bar. That's good to go. Then you can have some basic buffs here. So Igneous Weapons comes from Earth and Heart. It's a second ability here. I like this morph because we're not really doing heavy attacks on this build. If you wanted to do like a Lightning Staff front bar heavy attack build, you could completely do that. I would just use the other morph Molten Armaments for that one. But this is nice because it lasts 54 seconds. That's really good. And then 2 basic buffs here. Volatile Armor comes from Draconic Power. It's your first ability there, so that's our armor buff. That's very good. It adds a dot effect as well. That'll be buffed by Deadly Strike also. And then Cauterize on the back bar is nice for more difficult content. This will give you a nice burst heal every 5 seconds for 15 seconds. Plus, it's giving you Major Prophecy and Savagery on the back bar. And then, of course, for the ultimate, Standard of Might still That's going to be your back bar ultimate since we got the passive ultimate temporal guard on the front bar. So that is the 2-bar setup. It's really not much more challenging to maintain because we have mostly passives there. But to make this work, you'll start with your buffs, right? So igneous weapons, get your armor, get your cauterize up, and then your 2 back bar dots, bar swap, front bar dots, and then just channel that introspection. So there you go. Pretty much the same amount of dots. Just a few extra buffs are going to make you more powerful in this case. Once those wear off, make sure you recast your dots, recast your buffs, and then go back into introspection for the healing, for the damage reduction, and for the resource sustain. Use your buff trackers, especially if you're on console. It's going to be really helpful. Make sure your dots are staying up as much as possible. And then use that ultimate when it's ready. Actually, if you can save it for the start of the fight, that's the best time because it's going to reduce that incoming damage by 15%. Plus, it's going to increase all of your outgoing damage by 15% too. It's a really great ultimate. And we'll go ahead and just finish this guy off. We're about there. You can see that monster helm proccing, doing some pretty decent damage. I'm just chilling in my dots. There you go. Super easy. All right, what passives do you need on the Magicka Dragonknight to make this work? So Combustion got an update, actually. You're getting more max Magicka. Look, up to 1,000 Magicka when you apply burning to an enemy with a half-second cooldown. So tons of burning damage going on this build. It's going to be really easy to sustain now in the Deadlands DLC. That's a good one. Searing Heat increases the damage over time of our Dragonknight abilities by 33%. Pretty much the dot king as far as damage is concerned. So yes, you'll want Searing Heat. And then World in Ruin also got updated. This increases the damage of your flame attacks now by 5%, as well as poison. So this is very similar to like the Sorcerer passive that buffs their lightning and physical damage. Dragonknights now get flame and poison damage by 5%, which is actually good. Under Draconic Power, what passives do you need here? I would get Iron Skin for the block cost. For the damage mitigation on block, Draconic Power is good for the extra healing received if you're using the 2-bar setup. And then Scaled Armor for the extra physical and spell resistance. Finally, Earthen Heart. Eternal Mountain is good. This is what buffs your igneous weapons to 54 seconds, so definitely pick that up. Battle Roar. This saw a slight update as well. It's now giving you 50 health, magicka, and stamina for each point of the ultimate's cost. I believe that is an increase of about 4 or 5. Mountain's Blessing gives you minor brutality, so not a huge deal on this build, though you do get some ultimate back. And Helping Hands gives you some stamina back, so those are all pretty decent. Yes, you'll want all of your Destruction Staff passives, as well as light armor. We are a light armor focused build. That's because of things like Prodigy for the spell crit, and especially concentration for the extra pen, physical and spell pen now. This is great on a solo build. We mentioned guild skills briefly. The main guild skill that we're making use of is Psijic Order, and the reason for that is down here. Deliberation is insane now for solo builds. Check this out. While you are casting or channeling a Psijic Order ability, you reduce your damage taken by 30%. So that's the original value of Major Protection. It's now back on this Psijic Order passive. That's just a ton of damage reduction. And remember, we also have Minor Protection from Temporal Guard, and we have Major Protection from slotting Revealing Flare. So 3 protective buffs on the front bar just by channeling. That's really, really powerful on this setup. What else? What else? If you do run Revealing Flare, make sure to pick up Magicka Aid. This is a bonus 10% Magicka recovery while having any of these abilities. So we do have one of those. We get 10% bonus recovery. And then, of course, get your racial skills and alchemy medicinal use for the extra potion duration. Right, let's jump into champion points next. And as usual, we'll have 300, 600, 900, and 1200 CP loadouts over on the written guide. So go ahead and check those out if you need to. But starting in the green tree, we have the usual setup here. I definitely recommend starting in Steed's Blessing for the extra movement speed. Then hop on over to Gilded Fingers. Just start working your way up the tree here. The other slotted stars will want eventually Treasure Hunter for the increased quality of items you find in treasure chests. And then Rationer for the extra food duration. As well as Liquid Efficiency for the chance not to use our potion. Then moving over to the blue tree, we're going to start over in Precision, so extra critical chance. Hop over into Extended Might, and then get Piercing right away, extra offensive penetration here. And then we want to get into our big damage slottable stars. Starting with Thaumaturge, this is our damage over time. So 10% bonus dot damage. You'll want this as soon as possible. As we saw, most of our abilities, pretty much all of the damaging abilities are dot effects. And that's also going to stack with our extra damage from Deadly Strike. So plug in Thaumaturge right away. I do like to get Biting Aura as well on this build because a lot of our dots do begin with like an area of effect burst of damage to start with. So this will give you some additional damage there. And then I also like Fighting Finesse for the bonus critical damage and healing. That is quite good still. You'll want that for sure. And then we've also chosen Wrathful Strikes just to round out the damage. A little bit extra spell damage to our abilities. Then in terms of just if you have more points beyond that, you can come back into Extended Might, pick up Battle Mastery for the status effect bonus, and then Mighty for the extra spell damage, and then come down into Eldritch Insight for a little bit extra max Magicka, and then Staving Death is where we get our defensive passives. Best of those, definitely Preparation. Make sure you get this one, 10% damage reduction from non-player attacks. And you can also get Hardy and Elemental Aegis. Finally, in the red tree, we will start down here with Sprinter, come over into Hasty, Hero's Vigor, and then if you're doing a lot of, let's say, XP farming or running through dungeons, this is great. Siphoning Spells gives you up to 1500 Magicka back every time you kill an enemy. That's really powerful on this build. Then we can do our other slotted stars up here, Rejuvenation, some extra recovery. Fortified for the extra armor, and then Boundless Vitality for the extra health. Everything else is just passive. If you have the extra points, you can reduce your roll dodge cost, break free cost, and so on. Again, all of these will be listed over in the written guide. Link will be in the description if you want to check that out. All right, everybody, and with that said, that's going to wrap up the Fire God Easy Magicka Dragonknight 1-bar solo setup. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and you found it informative. Of course, if you did, don't forget to crush that like button. Let us know what you think down in the comment section below. And for any additional questions on the build, make sure to check out the written guide over at hacktheminotaur.com, where we list all the skills, alternate gear set options, champion point loadouts for 300, 600, 900, and 1200 CP, and much more. Link for that will be down in the description and the pinned comment in case you want to check it out. With that said, as always, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're doing well, stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.